Tuesday, and welcome back to another episode of MSL Lead Chronicles, where leaders learn from leaders. I'm Mary Morton, and along with my buddy Chad Fellers, we have casual talk about the challenges and successes in medical affairs with the most exciting and impactful professionals in pharma. As always, we have another great one for you today.
The views and opinions expressed by our guest, Shanti Frausto, are solely his own and do not reflect the opinions of his employer. His employer is not responsible for any of the content or statements that will be made in the following podcast. Enjoy the
show. Welcome back to another episode of MSL Lead Chronicles, where leaders learn from leaders. I am your host, Chad Fellers, along with my amazing, wonderful, fill-in-the-blank, lovely, fabulous workhorse, Mary Morton.
Lightweight.
How are you, Mary?
Yes. I'm good, and I'm nifty.
Nifty, I know. My nifty sidekick.
I like
well,
nifty.
I know, but I just, I want to try to shake it up every once in a while, and I don't feel like nifty fully describes you. It's one of the ways that I describe you. I guess I can't really share some of the other ways that I describe you too on the national on a national podcast. But nevertheless, it's great to be back. Hope you're surviving the heat. And what have you been up to this week?
Mate, I've been working my booty off. Business is fantastic. We are so busy, and I'm since you asked, I'll just say I'm so excited because we are working on some really cool projects in rare disease, first in disease. You know, it's really exciting.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I know, we're a bunch of nerds. We really like this stuff. So
it's really cool. One of the things I think maybe our listeners don't know is how different you and I are in ways. We have a lot of similarities, but I mean, we I think our giftings that we have, they come together and they work really well. And what I mean by that, if you're trying to understand what I'm saying, listeners, she is an amazing administrator. She pulls all these things together. It's like a body, right, where there's multiple functions and things. And that kind of tees up our conversation today. And we're thinking about diversity in teams and the importance of that, having different areas of support and strength to really elevate the team. And with that, now that I've kind of teased what we're going to be talking about, why don't you introduce our guest for this week, Mary?
I would be very happy to. So today we are welcoming Shanti Frausto, who is a PhD. Got his PhD in neuroscience from Northwestern University. Got a postdoc at Penn. Nice little Ivy League edition there. And I guess in collaboration with CHOP. His focus was in identifying novel drug targets and unmet needs in neurology. So epilepsy, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, which works great with where he is now. He also has an MBA, and I have to take a little bit of a step back and say, although Shanti now lives in the Chicagoland area, he is also a proud Texan. Somehow we let him leave the state. We don't usually do that, but we make special exceptions for our superior people.
He's always welcome back
someday.
Yeah, he's always welcome
one day. Absolutely.
At least come back to visit, right? But so Shanti's been in field medical for over a decade, first as an MSL and then as an MSL director for the past 5 or so years. I may not have that exactly right. Where he's led and built very high performing MSL teams. And I'm proud to say that I have known Shanti since the very beginning, since before the beginning even. I would say also, a nod to Nicole. Shanti is one of the lucky ones that got to work directly with Nicole Evans for most of that time. So welcome to the show, Shanti. We're so excited you're here.
Thanks so much, Mary. It's a pleasure to be here. And like I said, our relationship goes way back. So I'm happy to pay it forward. When you asked me to participate, it was a easy decision. I said, yes, sign me up. I don't care what it is. Let's do it because you've done great things. As Chad has mentioned, you've got your pulse on the leading edges in the industry and just the work that you do. And, the one thing that you have managed to do is impact and influence the lives of many folks in this industry, in this career path. So thank you for all the work that you've done directly and indirectly behind the scenes. And then Chad, thank you as well for the opportunity. I've seen, the podcast and what you guys have been doing, and I love it. Good stuff. So happy to be here and contribute.
Shanti, if I would have known that you had the same hairstyle as me, you would have been our very first guest. If that's any consolation, I love it. If you're not watching online, it's like it's a brother from another mother. I
I
love
know.
I
Had
love
I only
this.
known,
This
I
is
would have
so
done something
fun.
different with my hair
I
today.
keep looking. I'm like, is my screen the one on the right or on the left? Where am I? I'm confused here for just a second, but absolutely.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
oddly enough, I had this hairstyle many, many years ago, and then I had kind of switched it to kind of a comb over. And now I was like, I need to change something back, right, to jazz it up and live life a little. So yeah, so good to be back.
I'm gonna tell a real quick story on that. Yeah, so I turned this hair color about 15 years ago. So I was close to early 30s on this. And I was actually working at a Walgreens in store management. And this nice lady, I helped her out. And she's like, do you frost your hair? And I'm like, well, yeah, I know exactly, right, Mary? That's exactly the response I gave her. Like, why would I frost my hair at the age of in the early 30s? I'm not trying to be on America's Next Top Model or any of that kind of stuff, right? So anyway, but like you, I've just come to embrace it for what it is, and I'm happy that I have hair. So anyway, that's not what I can promise the listeners, that's not the focus of our conversation. There is diversity in hair
Yes,
on this podcast too.
I am not
and we need that.
embracing my gray hair. Just so this is not my
fair enough
natural color.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, Mary. All right. I digress. Let's get going.
Okay. So hot seat questions. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. This is the one everybody gets at the start. What is your walkout song? What would your walkout song be?
I'm a big baseball fan, and this is one of the things that I always look into at every single player. For a long time, my song was Elvis Crespo's Suavemente, right? It's got that Latin jazz beat and just really upbeat. But lately, my daughter has been into kind of monster trucks, and so we go to these monster truck shows, Monster Jam. I know that's kind of crazy, but I grew up in Texas and West Texas, and so off-roading was a big thing for us. But so we've been going to some of these shows, and she loves AC/DC Thunderstruck. So I think that probably would be my song right now if I had to flip it and change it. So yeah,
that's a great one. Okay. And then as a Texan who now lives in Chicago, and you know how much we love our Tex-Mex here, where's the best Tex-Mex that you have found in Chicago?
I don't think I've found really good Tex-Mex food in Chicago. I'll be perfectly honest, but Chicago does have a large Mexican American community, so there's a lot of great Mexican food. So I'd say there's a lot of great places, and not only that, and oddly enough, speaking of diversity, right, which is our topic for today, even within the food cuisine of the Mexican food, you have Mexican food from all different regional representations of the Mexican country, right? So from northern, Chihuahua down all the way south, different places, Mexico City influenced cuisine. So you can find it all here in Chicago. And that goes for any worldly cuisine. Let's just say I've gained a lot of weight since I've been in Chicago, exploring every single restaurant I possibly can. Yeah.
Well, all right. So if I'm going in search of traditional Mexican food, regardless of what part of Mexico they're representing, where do I go?
So, so this is a taqueria, and, those that live in Chicago might say, well, yay or nay, but Los Comales has always been a a staple, and it's on 18th Street in the Pilsen neighborhood of Chicago. That's been longstanding, great tacos, and and especially for the late night crowd, when you go, it's kind of equivalent to going to Whataburger right after a night out. You go to Whataburger and indulge. So yeah, I would say Los
Okay.
Comales.
All right. Make a note
Uh,
of that. All right. So now
already,
let's
yeah,
what I'm sorry.
already a key takeaway, right? So that kind of tees up really where we're going next, right? So listeners, I know we always start the show with really the highlights of what we're going to discuss today. So Shanti, do you have some key takeaways you want to share, make sure our listeners walk away with today?
So I think the first is, as it comes to teams, right? Diversity is at the core of great teams, right? So I think that's number one. Number two is adopting a diverse framework can help any average team become a great team, right? And then the last one, which I think is pretty important to what we do in the pharmaceutical industry, right, is that diversity can drive innovation, and innovation can drive diversity, right? So they kind of often go hand in hand.
All right. Well, I'm just going to start at the top.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So what does diversity really mean?
I think everybody can look at diversity and you can have different definitions, right? But I think diversity is being able to embrace uniqueness, right? At the core is being able to embrace differences, and not just embracing those differences, but allowing those differences or those unique attributes that we each bring, right? Whether it's our graying hair or whatever it may be, right? To bring it forefront out to the table and to give it a platform to shine, to nurture that talent, that skill, or that individualism that makes all of us unique. So I think as we look at, from a team perspective and diversity, it's really embracing different points of view, right? Whether it's, uh, age, gender, education and background, right? Socioeconomic status, or your life experiences that have led you, right? And even as an MSL, right? And what the work that we do, what kind of past experiences in the MSL world do you have, right? And, so looking at it from different perspectives, right? We talk about education. Do you want to build a team with just PhDs, right? Or a team with PharmDs, PhDs, MDs, right? There's a varying form of advanced D degrees that all have a different, unique perspective just based on their educational training, clinical training, and how they approach and view and solve problems. So I think that's really where, diversity can help. We can leverage diversity as we build out our teams, or, work with our existing teams. We all know that what makes us the same. We're all MSLs. We all want to, provide relevant information to HCPs so that they can be in a position to make a difference that, ultimately, change the life of a patient, right, or of a family, right, through treatment of whatever products that we support. And so as you build project teams, or different workflows for your companies, for your organizations, you want to look at, okay, what is the long-term objective? What is the short-term, but also the long-term objective, right? Because it's not just embracing it now, it's embracing it so that we support and foster a better future for our teams.
There's a couple of things that I'm just thinking about reflecting on this is for leaders out there. Number one, am I maximizing and leveraging the uniqueness of my team currently? And then maybe what may be keeping me from doing it right? And that's something I think we need to navigate too, to really get to that advanced level of what you're talking about, to really be an effective team. As a leader, do you think about a specific moment when having a diverse team or with different backgrounds and training levels actually advanced or led to a breakthrough or a unique solution? Would love to hear something or an example about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, I've been around, and have managed different teams and have built teams. But I think I'd want to say that embracing diversity starts at the beginning, right? And so one of the experiences that I will share is, from a how do you build a good team perspective, right? And looking at a diverse team perspective. And I know Mary and I have had this conversation before, or I've given her a glimpse of it, but where you're building out a new team, this is where you really have the opportunity to maximize and leveraging diverse inputs, right? So the example I'll give is that in my current role, when we were building out a, a, a team in the therapeutic area that there's a high need, right? And so what we did is, I mean, we were really rigorous in the hiring process, the interviewing process, to really try and bring and attract the best people, right? And when I say the best people, it's the best at what what they have done in their current and present career, the best that we can put in front of a HCP, the best that we know can grow their talent, right? And so we kind of looked at it from different perspectives. So if you look at the structure of our team, just in terms of a educational level, right, and background, I mean, we have PharmDs, we've had an MD, DO, PhDs in nursing, PhDs in neuroscience, right? And this is supporting a CNS product, but we've also had PhDs in physiology. We've had MSLs that have a background in rare disease background, and so a wide array of experience and expertise, right? But even within those subset of groups, right? Like when we look at our PhD team, there's some that are, like myself, are trained as neuroscientists, right? So it makes sense. You're building out a CNS team. You want to have that expertise, right? That inherent native expertise. We have folks who have 10 plus years of MSL experience, folks who have been in the industry for 20 plus years, right? And then we have folks on the other end of the spectrum who are just beginning their career, right? So when you start to think about it, we brought the best of the best in different areas and to really try and leverage and expand their expertise, because even though you're a 25-year veteran in the role, there's always something you can learn, right? And that's one thing I stress to people on my team who are very seasoned and tenured. And I said, look, what can you learn? What have you not done in your career to this date? Or if you have done it all, what can you do better, right? What can you be the expert in? And challenge them. Or I challenge them, what can you learn from somebody early on in your career? Or what will you teach somebody early on in their career that you didn't know, right, when you first started your career and your journey, right? And the opposite is true for somebody coming in, right? Asking the senior folks, right, the more tenured folks, like, what is it that you wish you knew when you started your journey, right? And so and then you have everyone in between that kind of leverages the expertise. But the other thing that's not that obviously we don't know until we start to really get to know people on an individual level after the hiring process is, sometimes we learn more about everyone's personal journey to their current state and career and where they are in life, right? And so sometimes as a leader, as you get to know your people, right, as you invest your time and energy in understanding who they are, where they're from, that also impacts how they do their job, right? Like your familial background, socioeconomic status growing up, all that. And so, and the reason why I say that is because, you have folks again at different levels, different spectrums, and sometimes motivation and drive stem from having spent your life at the bottom, right? And trying to work your way up and pull your own bootstraps and get up out there and going after it. So again, right, as we build teams, you really want to think about career experience. But the other critical thing to keep in mind is not just building for the now, but how do you build it for the future? I really want to just drive the point across that it really, if you have the opportunity to start it from the beginning, then that's your golden ticket. That's where you can build, a great team. But on the flip side, even if you don't, right, then you look at who are the people on my team now? What are their expertise? And if they don't have that expertise, is what can you do to provide them opportunities so that they build that diverse expertise that's needed within your teams, right?
Leadership requires strategy and tactics, right? So I think you're being what I'm hearing you say is, as leaders, it's important to be very, very strategic and intentional investment in our people as well, to know it may be worth having a 30-minute one-on-one on a weekly basis for a certain period of time, just to better understand what drives people, where to fully understand their personal journey from a strength standpoint and see beyond just the job description. It sounds like the importance is really attaching purpose to each person as well. I always try to tell in the past, with my teams, is I'm more invested in you and your long term than the role itself, because the reality is, in the environment that we're in, that could be so short term, right? So how do you help position that from a long term standpoint? And how you do it is just what you described earlier. So really, really great, great advice.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, Chad. Is that you really, being a leader and being a good leader is really investing in your people, right? And again, this is a small world, small industry, right? Like, we've got 1 degree of separation for many people across, and so I think, and I tell folks on my team, right, all the time, is like, hey, look, I'm here for you, right? Whether you're at this company, whether you move on to a different role, a different organization, my goal is to help you grow your career and develop. And, by God, I hope that it's at our current company, right, that you grow and develop. But if there, sometimes, let's face it, there aren't opportunities for everybody, right, at every organization, or sometimes they're limited. And so working with that individual to really understand that, hey, as a leader, your relationship, should span, beyond the now, right? And again, right, being strategic, thinking ahead, looking, how you can continue to help those people on your team down the road, because one day they may be in a position to help us, right? And in different capacities.
You talk about this in ways that are not just concepts that you've read out of books or watched on YouTube or MSL Lead Chronicles, although that may be a great resource for you on leadership journey.
Subtle.
No, and all. Hey, I'm even wearing a shirt now that says it too. No, in all seriousness, one of the things that drives me is, like, I'm a why guy. So I've got to hear, like, why is this area so important to you? Like, what makes this top of mind? I would love to hear a little bit about why this is a driver for you.
Yeah, Chad, I think this is a good question. I think, one of the things is, as leaders, right, as we grow up to lead teams, I think one of the things that a lot of individuals who are in a leadership role sometimes fail to do is be vulnerable, right? And it can be very hard. So I think this question that you kind of set me up, it kind of speaks to that belief that sometimes you've got to be vulnerable and share your own personal experiences with those around you, right? And so I think for me, I think a lot of it stems from where I'm from and where I came from, right? So I think, yeah, I'm a first generation college student, right? So I think I was the first in my family to graduate high school in the US, first to go to college, first to pursue any advanced degree, right? And yet alone another graduate degree after having a PhD. So I think a lot of that just stems from who I am, and my background, right? My parents are immigrants, right, to the U.S. from Mexico, and so I think and that factors and influence to how I do things, and my framework of thinking as well, right? And why diversity is a big part of who it is, because at least in my own personal journey, right, as you look ahead and move up the ranks in education, the number of underrepresented groups and minorities is smaller, right? And so you look at around you, there's not a lot of uh, individuals, with from underrepresented groups, and I think that's always been a passion of mine, is to help increase representation in folks who pursue careers in medicine, pursue careers in PhD or the STEM disciplines, right? To really drive forward that, because I seen firsthand the advantages that coming from a diverse background and how that can influence teams and companies and organizations, right? And so I think even as I grow my career, I want to be in a position to be an advocate, right? To be a voice for those individuals who have not had that opportunity or that platform. So I think when Mary asked me to come and speak, I said, yeah, absolutely, right. I love the work that you guys are doing with the podcast, but it also speaks to my passions as a leader, but also my passions as an individual, right? And I think sometimes that's why you've got to look at it and put things in perspective in terms of what makes us unique is not always a bad thing, right? And I think that's the interpretation is that diversity makes you different and therefore you shouldn't pursue it or you shouldn't touch it, right? But I think the opposite argument is the lift. It's proof that when you do value it, when you do examine it, when you do consider it, it can lead to a lot of great things and a lot of great outcomes for a lot of people.
And you talk a lot about in our conversations, and again, since I've known him for a really long time, one of the things I know that Shanti is really passionate about is the paying it forward. So now you've shared with everybody kind of what your purpose is at the core. How do you put that into play? Like in mentoring or and hiring to try to kind of help lift up those from underrepresented backgrounds.
Yeah, again, right. And you look at just, on paper, right? You can, as you review resumes, and Emery, you're probably a much better, you're an expert at reviewing resumes first than I, or, you've been doing this a lot longer than I have. And obviously you've got an knack for it. You send great people to us, right? But I think even as a hiring manager, right, looking at the individual's experience, right? And it's just looking at it, but then, identifying something that's unique about that person's experience, right? And really trying to leverage that out. And then, of course, a resume can only tell you so much about an individual. And so then when you have a discussion, right, just have a purposeful discussion, right? So some of the questions I ask are, questions about teamwork, being about, tell me about a time where, your point of view was counter to everybody else's in the room, right? And that's a great question because it allows people to think like, okay, I'm different here. I'm in a different spotlight. So what were the outcomes? What were the results of that conversation or that engagement? And you knew die hard in your core that this project would work if your idea is implemented, but everybody was on the opposite side of it, right? And so how did you achieve it? What did you do, right? So, because to me, it's about not just being able to stand your ground, right? When you have a different point of view, but also do you have the conviction to execute it and see something through, right? Or to say, hey guys, give me an opportunity here, right? If I fail, I fail, but at least I'm gonna die trying, right? I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna give it my best and do what I can. And if not, then I will succeed and say like, look, you guys were probably right, right? Maybe we should have done it this way, but we don't know until we try. And I think that's part of the problem sometimes is that we're not willing to try something different, right? We're just used to the status quo when following that straight and narrow line, right? Of like, this is how we get to from point A to point B. But the reality of it is, there's different points to the same destination, right? Different routes you can take, right? I talked about earlier about, having this, having grown up in the, West Texas in the desert and going off-roading, I'd take a Jeep or a Bronco any day and go over any terrain, rough, rugged, right? Than a straight fast sports car just to get there, right? So I think it's those experiences that allow you to see the world on your journey that kind of make you better.
That is
I
a great
love that. Yeah.
That is a great question though too. I was even thinking about an interview style question, and Mary knows like I'm very like I do not do like a rote set of questions at all. It literally is a conversation, and it's beautiful, right? Because you can there's always these follow-up. So tell me why, or tell me, and it's not a stock answer that someone's prepared. You really get a true understanding of what a person's makeup is. But the reason I like the question you just posed is because that's a forward-thinking leadership question too, right? I mean, that's showing leadership capabilities. Is this person that I'm interviewing, not only can they do their job in this fashion and lead without a title, but Do they have the potential to even be someone that could be a leader within the organization down the road as well too, just by understanding if they're thinking strategically and how they would position themselves in that area of conflict. It's almost like the standard question is, tell me about a time where you your boss asked you to do something or whatever, and then how did you handle the situation when it was against what you wanted to do, or what. But you asked it in a way, that question is more of how do you influence people, and then how do you stand up for the things that you believe and communicate that? Great question. Really good. Thank you. I'm going to write that down. It's really good.
Yeah, well, I encourage more MSL leaders to use that question, right? Again, to your point, it really drives out at who the individual is, right? And it could be in multiple forms, right? Who they are under pressure. Are they going to stand up for what they believe in? Because, when you relate it to MSL skills, right, you're going to get HCPs who are going to go counter to what your data says, right? And how are you going to withstand that argument and push back and say, no, look, this data is, this way because of X, Y, and Z, right? And so it allows that fundamental pushback skill that MSLs often need to have and be able to master it, right? And so it's hindered to, yes, understanding differences and working in a diverse setting, but also fundamentally there's MSL 101 skills that are attached to that response that you need to be able to pick up and identify, right? Because I put it in the sense, if I was an HCP and I was disagreeing with a particular data set, how are they going to respond, right? That's a difference in opinion right there, right? And so, that's one of the reasons why I asked that question. And so I hope that more leaders would integrate that into their interview process. Yeah.
Well, now I have to ask a question, because I feel like there's probably times you've got to kind of feel like I'm about to quote Kenny Rogers, know when to hold them, know when to fold them, but know when to dig your heels in, or know when to be a little bit more, well, maybe not passive, but I think that's one of those unwritten soft skills that we all know about, but you don't see on a job description. And that's, you have to be flexible. You have to be able to read the room. You have to just innately know when you push and when you don't. I'm sorry, I'm
Yeah, no,
rambling, but
I think
it's just a really interesting topic. And like, how do you react to the answer that someone gives you in an interview like that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, right? And so and again, this is where your own personal life experiences kind of influence career path, right? And so I think, first off, like I will say, like, you can dig your heels and, hold them, if it's counter to something that goes against your own ethics, your own moral standards, right? That you hold them, right? I think for me, that's a no compromise zone. But I think, when it comes, to the work that we do, right, in terms of, having conviction in our clinical data, right? And I think with some HCPs, we know that it's a process, right? And so you've got to, again, to what you said, is learn how to read the room, learn, check the tone, right, of the individual. If they're super defensive, then you might want to scale back, right? But if there's opportunity to say, hey, look, I understand that you see it this way, but maybe next time we speak, I'd love to show you some data that we can discuss, right? And then go from there. Or ask them, say, okay, why are you against this theory, this hypothesis, this data set, right? Help me understand what would matter to you, right? What matters for you in making those treatment decisions for your patients, right? That's not in line with what you see from our data, right? From our clinical data set, right? It could be that that is something that leads to a valuable insight, right? And I think that's another big thing, right? Is that you know we learn a lot from insights that can yield our approaches so that we can pivot and strategically adapt to what we have going on to better subserve our medical strategies, right? And so I think a lot of it is just really asking more questions, the so what's, right? Why? Help me understand. I think you get a lot further when you start to asking those questions, especially when it's a difference in points of view, right? And that's the thing that kills diversity, is that nobody dares to ask those questions, right? Why is it different? Why does it work this way? Or why did you have this experience, right? And so I think being open and flexible to those discussions, I think can carry us a long way.
And I can see all of Chad's like dopamine firing right now because you said why, I think like 7 times, and that's his favorite word, just about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you think about this. Yeah, just a couple points on this. Number one, I would say you talk about diversity and thought. I think one thing that's important is, am I creating space for my team to share those those experiences on how you navigate navigate those types of conversations? Or so that would be one, like, is it like a best practice sharing? Like, there's no it's not about right or wrong, it's right or left in this situation as far as how you would engage or certain questions that you would ask. That would be one. The second would be, I'll never forget, like, I used to hate when I was a first MSL, hate going into certain KOL conversations because I knew that they were always combative or crotchety, old, been there for 30 years and fixed in their ways. And it was always, hey, I'm going to try to shoot down things. And I don't know what it was, but something along the line, it became, it was, I was actually doing onboarding a new MSL, and they were shadowing me. Went out, never forget, and this same kind of attitude. Oh, your product is this, or this day. And, my response was, you know what, Dr. So-and-so, I love coming here because you always shoot it straight with me. And I know that now tell me exactly. So tell me why, or tell me more about what you're thinking with this. Right. So I think if we drop our defensive posture about that's the key, and truly seeking to understand. I think that just opens up the door of opportunity, and also helps create this idea of a trusted scientific advisor with the people that we're engaging as well too, right? So that's what separates those those amazing MSLs in the minds of KOLs, is those that will engage in that way. They don't feel threatened, but they truly are engaging in scientific rigor by just exploring, having those types of conversations. We can't always have the answers. I think that's the thing. We want to be able to provide answers. Sometimes we don't have them. And so the key is just being able to being willing to explore and learn, I think, from others around. So that was really, really sound advice that you had.
Yeah, Chad, and if I can follow up, I think it's very cool that you did that, right? And I think that is what will start separating, those HCPs from being your KOL to being your peer, right? And so that's some of the things that I tell my team, right? Like, yes, they're HCPs, they're KOLs, right? And they're KOLs because they've worked a career and they've built up and what they do, but they're not your peers yet, right? You've got to work and put in, the time and the effort and the understanding them so that you could develop those peer-to-peer relationships. And I think when you get to that level, then you know what MSLing is all about, or a good source of what it is all about, right? It's always a work in progress, though. But I think if we are able to distinguish that, I think that's going to make a lot of MSLs aspire to be like, hey, I want to be peer-to-peer, right? Just because we all have advanced degrees, sure, we're peer-to-peers in an educational level, but a true peer-to-peer where you can deflect and bounce ideas and they reach out to you and vice versa, I mean, that takes time and skill to develop.
So before we, I want to think about kind of where you are, where you want to go in the future. Before we get there, I want to go back to, I think, a comment you made earlier about leveraging diversity, and that really drives innovation, drives things forward. Is there a particular example that comes to mind that really puts this in action when we think about how that this has allowed innovation to occur?
Yeah, it's, when I was at the previous company and I'll related to kind of medical affairs and what we do as MSLs, right? And I think one of the things that's big to any company or any MSL is this issue of, field medical insights, right? We say insights, right? And not everybody can understand insights, and everyone has a different process for collecting and gathering insights and evaluating them and whatnot. But I think, number one, I firmly believe that insights is a team sport, right? There's got to be multiple players involved to really drive forth insights. So, for leaders and teams that have one individual sourcing all the MSL insights, you're kind of keeping it narrow, right? You're not going to get an expanded perspective. So I think, one of the things that I've done in my career, where I can give you this example of innovation and where diversity really blended in, was, I said, okay, we bring in insights on a monthly basis, right, from a MSL field perspective. But what are we doing with these insights, right? Where are they going? What's happening? Who are we communicating them to, right? So I helped our company at the time build out an insights team, right? A fully integrated insights team that consisted of, your home office medical director team, field medical leadership, and then the lead insights MSLs, right? We had folks from HUOR, right? Field HUOR. We had regulatory. We had folks from legal. So different perspectives, different vantages and points of view, right? From within our medical ways of operating. And so really that allowed to not just here are the insights and present the insights at a monthly strategy meeting, right? But it was more like, okay, this is what the insights are saying. How are we going to execute and build this forward and move it together, right? So it's, or what do you think we can do, right, from your respective functions to address these issues together, or these gaps, right? And so I think that really, helped drive the organization forward and develop better, assets for the field MSL team, better projects and studies for our HOR real world evidence team, right? Better strategic advisory boards for our medical director team, or managing better symposia at different national and international conferences. So I think kind of putting it all, again, people from different points of view, right, looking at the same pieces of information, can look at it from different perspectives. And so that really allowed things to drive forward. And then, and how that drove innovation, right? We started to do things that organization had not done before, right? So now we're like, okay, on a quarterly basis, let's start thinking about, from a strategic perspective, what are our key insight topics that we want to evaluate that support our strategy? And then what are the key insight questions that we want to drive forward, right? And then at every quarterly basis, okay, are these still in line with what we're seeing? Have we addressed those particular questions or those gaps? If so, yes, okay, check the box, let's move on. But then at the same time, we kept tracking all this information. So again, bringing people from different parts of the medical team together to really help solve the problems that are right in front of you, right? And then, but it also, what it did is, I always like to tell our team now, and any team I've been on, that insights is your currency, right? As an MSL, that's the value you bring to the table, right? Like that's gold for what we do in our world, right? And so I think, having those insights up front and center, and knowing that there's action being driven out of them, that makes an MSL feel like top of the world, right? Like, hey, I talked to, these doctors, this is the information they said. And then now, because of that, they're going to, push forward a particular advisory board, or develop a new resource, right? Or modify our medical affairs webpage, or what have you, right? But you see the impact, and that's connected to the work that we do on a daily basis. So many times that goes unrecognized, and can lead to apathy. Well, I go out here and collect all these insights and nothing happens. But I think that's our way of being strategic and embracing diversity, because it really is different people, different trains of thoughts to kind of put together. So I hope that answers your question, Chad.
And
I
you're
mean,
speaking his love language. So
I was going to say, I think you actually took my follow-up comment, right? About about that being the currency of medical affairs. It really is. Especially in a day when we can't really, it's difficult to quantify or even show or to put value on paper, right? That we bring versus this whole gravity analogy, right? We know we know that people are doing things, we just can't necessarily see or feel it in certain ways. So yes, I agree with you wholeheartedly about that. Thanks for sharing that example. You were intentional to bring in diverse groups to really position your team. And the fruits of that sounds like it was very, very good. So thanks for sharing that particular example.
Absolutely.
So Shanti, what drives you now? Like what's the next challenge or goal that you want to tackle?
So I guess personally, my children, they keep me busy right now. Right? I got a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old that she's about to start kindergarten. So, everything I do is for them, obviously, make sure that they're in a position to succeed long term. But, professionally, I think it's, there was a point in time in my career where it was about the title, it was about climbing the executive ladder, and while all that it is important to some degree, right? I think it's important because you want to be at a different level of influence, right? I think that's the importance of it for me. But I think for me, it's about working with good people, right? Surrounding myself with individuals that are just as committed and devoted to the therapeutic space that you're currently working on, or have conviction and belief in the work that you're doing, that it's really going to help improve the quality of lives of individuals, and improve the lives of families, right? And so I think that drives me, right? I want to make sure people are, we're on the bus, headed in the right direction or the same destination, right? We could be in different vehicles. I think we've established that one, but as long as we all are on that journey to get to the same spot, right, or that same common goal, I think that really, that really drives me. And along the way, it's not just getting out there. We all have our individual way of getting there, but making sure for me that everybody on my team has the best possible experience, right? And as a leader, right, one of the things that we're supposed to do for our teams is, how do we remove any barriers, any roadblocks, right, from helping you, succeed and move forward. And so I think for me is making sure that I'm on 10 different parallel roads, right, to helping these individuals, but removing different barriers. And some of the barriers may be the same for 2 or 3 individuals on the team. They may be different for one individual on the team, but it's learning to accept that and to work that. So I think, to answer your question, Mary, I think it's just, surrounding myself with people with a purpose, I think.
Love it.
Helping identify people or purpose in others as well too is what I'm
Absolutely.
hearing from you, right? I think the takeaway that I also heard too is, regardless of where you are on the corporate ladder, there's an opportunity to influence others, right? And whether it's with a title, without a title, and how do you raise up other leaders? Part of that's just by the modeling of how you go about your work. You didn't really say this, but I mean, the things that you're talking about are all essence of servant leadership, right? And I think that the beautiful thing about that is, it is something that you get to control and you get to give, and it's not dependent on anybody else, right? So, and then even the satisfaction and being able to fulfill your own purpose by doing that, of serving others, it is something that's dependent on you. Uh, Others can choose to receive it or not, but it's your opportunity to give. So that type of mindset will last and carry people such a long way. I don't think that they fully, or not all fully, appreciate that. So I'm glad to learn from another servant leader, Shanti, like yourself. So thanks for sharing that. Any other key things that you want to make sure the listeners take away as we wrap things up?
Yeah, I mean, I think, just to kind of sum it up, right, I think diversity can lead to greatness, right? And I think the one final thing I would say is, for everybody out there, right, don't be afraid to be different, right? Be who you are, bring your authentic self every day, right? And you may be in an environment where people don't appreciate that or value it, but just stay true to who you are, right? And this is a time where you hold them, you don't fold them, right? You got to just keep writing it out, right? Because at the end, hey, you might get that royal flush, right? And you're gonna win big. So I think you've got to just keep doing what you do it in a way where it doesn't compromise who you are. So that's what I would say.
I like
love
it.
that.
It'll create opportunities for you down the road in some form or fashion. Hopefully with the same organization, and if not, it's just confirmation that there might be another opportunity that's better suited to your giftings out there. But keeping true to your heart, who you are, is essential. Thanks so much, Shanti, for just sharing a little bit about your journey, what drives you as a leader, as a person. So many times we get involved or taken aback by this industry machine, right? That's performance driven, and that's so important. But they're at the heart of it, it's people too. And so you did a really good job of sharing your story and how you incorporate the human aspect of it too. That's so important as leaders. Those are things that we can control. So would love to have you back on at some point down the road if you're willing.
Absolutely. I will accept the invitation anytime. And it's been a pleasure. I had so much fun. And yeah, keep up the good work. And thank you for contributing to the field. I think this podcast is amazing. And I really do hope that those that haven't tuned in get to listen and go back and listen to the previous podcasts that are out there. And, like I said, I myself have listened to it, and you pick up nuggets anywhere you can, right? So yeah, certainly appreciate it.
All in this together. And with that, thank you so much, listeners, for tuning into another episode of MSL Lead Chronicles. Remember, leaders don't develop in isolation. Leaders learn from leaders, and that's what we do here. Thanks so much for joining us. And until next time, lead well.